How's it going, everybody, and welcome to How Good Is It Really? My name is Jeremiah.
I'm Luke.
And today we're talking about Top Gun Maverick. Okay, sequel, 36 years later?
Yeah.
Something like that?
If you haven't already seen it, I would be shocked at this point. This movie's made over $1 billion worldwide.
Has it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's made over $1 billion, and it deserves it. It is... I'm just going to come right out and say it within the first 40 seconds of this video. It is a fantastic movie. It has wonderful acting, an amazing score, and soundtrack to it. The CGI is amazing when it is there, and you can't tell the difference between when it is and isn't.
Yeah.
And the dogfight sequences are breathtaking. And the jokes land perfectly. And the acting is really on point. I think the only point of contention that we have is more or less about there's one kind of pseudo plot hole, and there are just a number of motivational issues, but that's about it as far as I can tell.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit beforehand, but not a whole lot, because there's about 3 areas that I kind of bumped into while watching the movie. None of them major, but just that kind of takes me out of it a little bit. You could have done better there. A little disappointed, but
for sure.
Yeah, overall, I agree. This movie was really good.
Yeah.
Like you said, the CGI is, you can tell that love and care went into making this movie.
100%.
You can tell that just by watching it.
Especially with the little monologue that Tom Cruise gives, where he just says that thank you for watching my movie, where
he has a little intro. Tom Cruise has a little intro speech he does 30 seconds or something like that right before the movie, basically thanking you for coming out and seeing the movie, because it was when was it supposed to come out?
2 or 3 years ago.
At least 2 years ago, it feels like.
Yeah,
when
it was
the movie
supposed
was
to come out a while ago.
To come out,
but
it didn't, because the whole pandemic and all that. Nobody would go to the theaters, so they didn't want to release it in streaming because they wanted people to go to the theater to see it.
Oh, that was the best decision that they could have made.
I agree. You kind of need to go.
You need to see it in the theater.
Because a lot of what they do in this movie is really well done, really breathtaking.
I went to see it with my wife, and we were both just awestruck at how good it was. Now, I don't know if that's just simply because we've had a rash of really bad, mediocre movies lately, where one good film that's just good but not excellent,
it can stand out,
really stood out. But I genuinely do think that this movie is just very exceptional. I do think the cast is one of the best put together set of actors that I've ever seen. For people that I've never seen in other roles, and then one or two that I've seen in a few others, and then you just have some just absolute A-list stars like Jennifer Connelly and Ed Harris for the 5 minutes that he's in it, and Tom Cruise, obviously, and we get to see Val Kilmer as well.
Yep.
Not CGI,
which
physically is present in the film.
I saw this movie 2 days ago for the first time. I've only seen it the one time. I knew he was going to be a character in the movie. I didn't know he was actually going to be in the movie.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
I knew that they were going to reference him. He's clearly still around.
Yeah, somehow.
Iceman is still there. But I didn't know that he was actually going to be in the movie.
Right.
And it didn't hit me until I saw him on screen. Oh, right. This movie was shot 3 years ago.
Yeah, no, he is in the film. And true to real life, Val Kilmer does have throat cancer, and he has a very hard time speaking. And so they did do a really cool thing where they kind of did captures of his voice from different things and edited that together in an what do they call that? And they just did a dub over where he speaks the lines, but obviously he can't speak really. So you hear it, but it sounds the same as somebody speaking with an extreme difficulty with throat cancer. And so I thought that was really cool.
But yeah, with I was not expecting to actually see him in it for
Yeah, I wasn't either. I thought he would just be like
Because
the
of
plaque
his-
on the wall that we saw in the trailer.
Right, because of his throat cancer, like in the documentary Val that came out.
Yeah.
Like
That's why he
that-
can't act anymore.
Right, so I didn't expect him to actually be in it. So I was delighted to actually see him show
Yeah.
up.
And
I really
it's
was.
Not cheesy at all. It's like incredibly touching. Like really touching.
100%. Which is cheating in a little bit. I only say that because it's as touching as it is only because of the real world situation.
But also because
Like
they structure the story in a way.
They do. They structure the story in a way where Iceman's character is basically going through the same thing that Val Kilmer himself actually is.
Right. And not only that, but just the world that they're in where Tom Cruise's character is really having some issues being much older and going through some stuff as far as kind of the plot points. We're not going to get into spoilers right away, but
we'll wrap our non-spoiler section up pretty quick.
But they have this heart-to-heart conversation, and if you've seen the original Top Gun movie, they do build a rapport and a friendship at the end of the film because Tom Cruise saves Iceman's life, along with a number of other pilots that he saves in a dogfight against 3 Russian MiGs, shoots all 3 of them down, and saves his Top Gun class, basically, like his Iceman, I think, and a couple of others from the Top Gun class that he graduated with. But basically that's the extent of the relationship there. Like, Top Gun, the first movie, wasn't really meant to ever... Like, it was not meant to have a sequel. It was a standalone movie that
100%.
was done to the best of its ability at the time. It doesn't age very well. It's still fun to watch, but it definitely lags a bit in some places.
It ages fine. It's just a cheesy 80s movie.
I don't think it does age very well when it comes to the fighter sequences. Like, those look bad.
The limitations of the filmmaking at the time.
Yeah.
I don't think that...
Maybe I shouldn't judge it too harshly for that.
Yeah, I don't think that can cause something to age... Okay, well, it can. I guess, limitations of filmmaking whenever a film is made can cause it to age.
Go into it knowing that it's a little rough in that way, but the acting's still good and the filming's good. Except Tom Cruise is a little whiny and tends to yell everything. But other than that, it was a self-contained story that didn't really need a sequel, and we got a sequel that was. It's going to be one of the most copied formulas for sequels moving forward because this movie is making so much money. And it is universally liked, like worldwide liked. Like, this movie rocks. It's good.
Yeah. I like this movie. I'm not as high on this movie as Luke is. Like I said, I have a little more issues.
Do you want to talk about the issues now? Like, do we need to wait till the spoilers discussion?
We'll wait till the spoiler discussion to really get into it.
Okay.
The aspects that I don't like. But overall, it was hyped up for me before I went to go see it.
That's my fault. That's 100% my fault.
But I did enjoy it. It is very good. If you are at all interested in seeing this, I would recommend that you do go and see it. If you have already, then stick around for our spoiler talk, which I think we can go ahead and get into.
Yeah. The only thing I was going to say to this effect is like slightly unrelated, but in the realm of movies that are just pro-America and just patriotic and unapologetically patriotic, this is one of the best ones I think I've ever seen. With like maybe Saving Private Ryan and a few others being on the same level. And I would recommend if you have a patriotic bone in your body and you haven't seen this film yet, for whatever reason that you haven't, you've been living under a rock, go watch this movie. I'm talking to my dad right now because for whatever reason my dad still hasn't seen this movie. But I watched my mom cry leaving the theater. This movie is that good. And my mom hates going to the movies. So just this is, I think on that note, the point I'm trying to make with this is that this is one of the times that I have seen in modern, recent memory for me that a narrative has been unapologetically pro-American, pro-U.S. military, and aside from, there's a couple of other films, 3 that I'm thinking of specifically, but 3 out of almost 10 years. This would be the 4th that I would put on that list. And it's just great. And I think it deserves credit for being American and being unapologetically American, but also being just a wonderful movie that doesn't inject a dime of political messaging at all. Like,
Yeah.
for a movie that is pro-America and pro-U.S. military, it is completely devoid of anything political whatsoever. I didn't even think
Yeah.
that was possible to make a movie like that anymore. But they did it, and they proved it successful, because everyone can watch this movie. It doesn't matter what you believe or where you're from or who you are. Everyone can get on board and enjoy this movie because it doesn't preach at you. It's just a good movie about an amazing dynamic between the most... You wouldn't think that a movie about fighter pilots would really be that engaging, but
Yeah.
it really is. And there's some real drama, and it's good. There are some stuff that lands a little flat, but
Yeah, some spots.
the amount of flatness for the amount of just top tier out of this, for me, this is one of my favorite movies of 2022. Absolutely.
It might be one of mine. I don't know yet. It might be.
Maybe go see it a second time before you make that decision.
I don't know if I want to.
Okay, that's fair. You might want to, though. Think
I don't
about it. It'll grow on you.
It's like, you don't want... Maybe you do.
You just don't
think
know
about it.
you do.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into spoilers discussion. So you've been warned. 3, 2, 1. If you haven't seen it, I don't know where you've been, but if you haven't, this is your warning to dip out. So we're going to get into spoilers. All right, here we go.
Okay. I hate the first interaction with everybody at the bar. It's stupid and it makes no sense. Let me explain.
All right.
Let me explain. We talked about this a little bit beforehand, too. About it's just an overplayed trope in movies like this where you have the, hothead pilots or soldiers or whatever they are that are just like super egocentric and it's all about them.
High on their own farts.
Everybody in this movie, like the class, they're all graduates of Top Gun, so the best of the best, but they're the ones that graduated from being the best of the best. So they're all like super egotistical. It's like, I'm just done with that stupid device in movies. I'm just over it. I don't want it. I don't like it. I think it's stupid. Thankfully, it doesn't last that long, except for the one character, Hangman, who is the Iceman of this movie.
Yeah.
Because while Iceman was in the first movie, Hangman is in this one.
Yeah, he's the douche of the film.
He is. But I also did not like it came across just so weird. Okay, so the scene in the bar where
When they're playing pool,
Tom
or
Cruise,
when he's at the bar?
Tom Cruise goes there for the first time.
Okay, so
and
when he first
meets Penny again.
Right.
And because he's been called back to Top Gun, and he's at the bar because that's the local bar. But he also sees all the other pilots, and he knows who they like.
He knows who they are.
He knows who
Everybody
they are,
who
but nobody knows who he is.
Right.
And it make it clear that Penny and Pete had a thing in the past, and maybe once or twice or 3 times, kind of ongoing over 20
off
years.
and on, love-hate relationship kind of thing.
Yeah, where been on and off for a while, and this was just one part of the movie. It's just like it felt weird. They're talking, and he compliments her.
Yeah.
Well, he says, "You look good."
Right.
Because they haven't seen each other in a few years.
She
probably
says don't do that or something.
Well, no, not
Okay.
even. So she.
I can't remember.
Because they were clearly have a past, haven't seen each other in a while. He makes the comment, "You look good," like you would tell somebody that you haven't seen in years. And she rings the bell. Then points to the sign behind her.
Oh, right,
Which is
right.
if you disrespect as a woman or the Navy, you
Yeah,
have to buy a round or whatever.
Something like
Something
that.
to that effect, implying that he disrespected her.
I thought it was
she
more of like a
clearly-
joke between the two of them than
But
anything.
he clearly didn't.
Right, no, he didn't, for sure.
But then he still has to buy the round for the entire bar.
But then after that, she does say, "You don't actually have to pay me for that." But then he insists on it anyway.
But it's still stupid.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, when he goes to pay and his card gets declined,
Yeah, then she rings it again.
then she rings it again.
and he gets kicked out.
Which is, again, stupid because...
And he gets ejected.
Right, he gets thrown out of the bar, which is stupid because nobody in that bar would know what that bell ringing the first time means.
Second time,
unless
though,
you're aware, which, okay, fair enough if that's the rule that the bar has.
and it is a Navy bar on Navy
But then
property.
if you ring it the second time and no clarification is given, how do you know it wasn't the first one happening again?
I think the implied consensus is that all those people are regulars, and it is a Navy bar. Like, the name of the bar is the hard deck. Or
Something
what
like
do they
that.
call it?
I don't know what it's called.
It's like the term that the pilots use in the film for like the limit. The limit of the ceiling that you can go to before you're like in dangerous area where you can crash.
It's something like that,
or die. But something they call it that, and that's what it's called. And it's clearly right there on the beach. It's right there in California. Like it's obviously attached to. I'm assuming this is Pendleton Air Force. My goodness, Pendleton. The Navy base, the Navy Marine base, right there in San Diego.
I don't know. But yeah, it just...
Camp Pendleton. That's what it's called.
It did not work for me. It felt clunky. It felt forced. It didn't make sense narratively whatsoever to have her ring the bell and everybody knows what it means. And she rings it a second time and everybody automatically knows what it means for her to ring it a second time.
Sure, that's
instead
fair.
of it just being the first one happening again. And, like... regardless of whether they're regulars or they're like bar rules, it was clearly contrived to begin with because that wasn't the intent or the reception of anything that was made, and it was her just taking the piss for no apparent reason and everybody clearly knowing what's happening when nobody should know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that was just her way of like getting back at him.
For what?
I don't know. Clearly they have
leaving her in the past?
Something. Who knows? But I think that was part of what it was.
Down with the pilots that are all cocky and
but
egocentric.
We get one of the best, and it's so funny. Bob, just the NFO that's sitting there.
I like Bob.
Yeah, Bob's great.
I like Bob.
And he's just sitting there, and Hangman makes the comment about him being a stealth pilot. And he's like, I'm a weapons systems analyst, actually. And he's like, with no sense of humor. And they just... Moving on. Yeah, just the riffs just go really well together.
And
then they ask him, they're like, what do they call you? And he's like, Bob.
No, your call sign.
Yeah.
Bob.
Bob.
Barring that, all the other interactions the pilots have with each other is just as stupid and cheesy as the first one. I did not like it at all.
So I will say this. The names of the two black pilots were so stupid. Payback and Fanboy.
I didn't mind Fanboy.
Those were stupid.
Just because it's so weird, like, okay, what crazy thing
are you
a fan of that somebody gave you that nickname?
And now it's stuck to where it's like on your flight suit and on your helmet.
Payback, most of the names in here I could give or take. They're names for the sake of names. But Fanboy was the one that I actually found interesting.
Did you pick up on the one that was the Asian kid and his name was Yale on the top?
Well, you had Yale and you had Harvard.
Yeah, but it was just funny because of, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but...
The only ones I remember is Rooster, obviously.
Yeah.
Hangman.
Phoenix.
Fanboy. Phoenix. Bob. Payback. Because that's the main team.
Right. But there were a couple...
four other guys.
Yeah, there were
6 other ones. That are just not as important.
Yeah, we get them briefly in some shots here and there.
But yeah, the whole bar interaction to like the personality, like the interactions of like, jabs at each other back and forth is just as cheesy as the first one. I didn't like it there either.
I think it was just a running gag that they carried over for people who are fans of the original.
Do it better. Do it better.
It kind of it dies off though after that, where they don't really do that anymore. They do fight, but not to that extent. Where Hangman is still a douche through the rest of the film. But they don't, just riff on each other like high school, competing sports teams. They don't really do that. But we get a really... After that, they move on, and they go to the flight school, where they are introduced to Pete, where he basically throws the manual for the F-18 in the garbage can, and pisses off the admiral, the base admiral.
John Hamm.
Yeah. And he basically tells them, you're the best, but have never actually flown in combat against other pilots. That's not a thing that they've ever done before because, quite frankly, the U.S. has had air superiority for the past 50 years.
Right.
So there hasn't been real dogfights since Vietnam, and that's because just by nature of what we have, that's just not necessary anymore, and pilots don't have to risk their lives that way.
Yeah.
But for the premise of the movie, that's the whole point. And so they go through this really cool training montage where he basically single-handedly beats all of them in simulated dogfights.
Yeah.
And they have this
fun.
really stupid bet where they say like 100 push-ups
200.
or 200 push-ups.
If you get shot down.
Yeah, if you get shot down, which...
He shoots all of them down multiple times.
Frankly, I don't know if 200 push-ups is even like feasible over...
I don't know what the actual record is for consecutive push-ups.
I don't know. I don't think
That's
it's held.
over 200 though.
I don't think it's held by Navy pilots though. Like I think
Probably
it's
not.
probably like SEALs or Rangers or something. Like it's probably not Air Force pilots.
Let's see.
Or not Air Force, Navy pilots. Excuse me. No shade on Navy pilots. It's just I don't know that push-ups are job requirement for flying a jet. But in any case, they go through this really, really awesome training montage, and we get to see some character development for Rooster, who we find out very early on that he is the son of what is it?
10,507.
10,000? By who?
World record for the most number of non-stop push-ups is 10,507 by Minoru Yoshida of Japan, which was achieved in October of 1980, breaking the previous record of 7,650 held by Henry C. Marshall from the U.S., which was set in 77.
Does it say if they were like service members or anything?
I don't know.
Totally irrelevant. Anyway. We do get
but interesting.
Yeah, that's an absurd amount of push-ups. Like that guy must be built like a freight train, or have like literally zero fat content.
It helps if you're also light.
Yeah, Bruce Lee, man.
I mean,
Asian superpowers. So we get to see some really cool character development for Rooster, who we find out has a huge chip on his shoulder, and has a loathing hatred for Maverick. Go ahead.
I like what they did here.
I do too. I liked everything about how they did this. It was great. Didn't feel forced at all.
It did when they introduced the drama. Like the first time...
when you find out the reason for why, though.
Agreed.
Okay.
When they first introduce it, it feels forced because you're like... Because they immediately draw attention to this rift between Goose and... Not Goose. Rooster and Maverick about Goose. You think it's about Goose. It's not.
No.
Which I'm glad. I'm very happy that that's not like the linchpin for this like drama between them.
Is his dad's accidental death, which the Navy ruled was an accident and he was not responsible for?
It's like, yeah, you're maybe still kind of bitter about that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think you ever really get over that necessarily. But that's not the driving force for the drama between the characters. It's the fact that he pulled his papers from
the Naval Academy
or whatever it was and set him back like 4 years or something. Like,
Yeah.
he interfered in his career to try and keep him from being a pilot, essentially, because as we find out later, like his mom did not want him to be a pilot because she didn't want the same thing to happen to her son that happened to her husband.
She forced Pete to make a promise as she was dying, essentially, that he would do all that he could to keep her son from having the same fate as his father.
The revelation of all the reasons.
And that comes out in the conversation with Iceman, which, again, is why I feel like that scene doesn't rely on Val Kilmer's actual illness to sell it. Because
No, I wasn't implying that it did.
No, but it kind of does.
But it adds a little extra weight because
it does. It does. And that's just brilliant casting on their part. But also, the way that they
not really. Like, yes, but also not really. I mean, he was
they
Iceman before.
but they didn't have to put him in the film.
Yeah, but you're not going to get somebody else to do it.
Right, but they put him in the film purposefully and knowing that he had throat cancer and he can't speak.
Yes.
So, but they don't rely on that. Well, they kind of do, but not really. The drama that they really unfold in that scene revolves around.
It's between Maverick and Rooster.
Yeah, but it's Rooster's mom, where Pete basically says, like, I pulled his papers, and he's like, well, why'd you do that? And he's like, because his mom made me promise that I would keep him from dying, essentially. And he goes, well, he says, well, why haven't you told him? He's like, well, there's no reason for him to hate me and his mother.
That's not when he's talking to Iceman.
You sure? I'm pretty sure it happened in that scene.
Nope. that particular conversation happens when he's talking.
Oh,
to
that's
Penny.
right. When he's talking to Penny, that's right. Two different scenes. You're absolutely correct. But he does talk about pulling his papers, but he makes a comment about like it's time to let go, like and stop, like
Yeah, but that exact
torturing
conversation,
yourself over
not
his
with
father's
Iceman,
death.
that was with Penny.
You're right. Both brilliant scenes, but yes. Go ahead, take it from there.
But yeah, the stuff with Iceman I think it plays. It's not a negative of the film, but it does hit a little more emotionally just because it is Val Kilmer that's actually there.
It's the
It
first
helps
movie we've seen him in
a long
very
time.
long time.
A very long time. And I don't know if they had his son do any voiceover to layer on top of his voice, or if he's actually still able to speak that much. I know he can at times.
Yeah.
It's kind of hit and miss because his son sounds extraordinarily like him,
Really?
like a younger him.
Okay. So maybe they did use his
because
voice
he
then?
narrates. His son narrates the Val documentary,
Okay.
and it sounds like
Just
Val
like Val.
Kilmer 30 years ago.
That's funny.
Like it was very well done.
And he has a really iconic voice too, so that's cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
But then moving on from there, I kind of want. I'll touch on the other thing that I didn't like.
Yeah, there
later,
really isn't like
because
there's
that's
a
more
big,
towards the
like,
end of the film.
There's a big middle section of this film where nothing happens except for drama. Where characters are just kind of like learning to get along with one another, and Pete is like learning where he fits into this new world that he's in, where he's
But I
back
like
in
that.
pennies. It was good. It's
like
good.
that.
I'm just saying there's just not much that we really need to elaborate on. It's just
Sure.
we get a really cool beach scene where they play sports just like the original, except instead of
I forget what they call it.
sausage fest volleyball, it's
What is it?
it's basically football, but it's like offensive defensive football, like
Right. I forget what they call it. They had a specific name for it, but basically where you play offense and defense at the same time. So if you're familiar with the sport of football or NFL, you're either playing offense or defense, but then they're
You only
playing a
get so many
scrimmage
tries
match.
to
They're
get-
playing a scrimmage match where you have to play offense and defense at the same time, where both teams are trying to advance it. It was interesting. It was cool to watch.
yeah, and they have a really cool song that they play at this particular point. I don't know the name of it, but
I
it's
don't
really
remember
good.
which song it was.
It's really good though.
All the songs are good. My main issue with the music is one that I have with soundtracks in general. It's not isolated to this film, which is a personal preference that I don't care for soundtracks as much when they are devoid of any reasoning for existing other than just to be there. What I mean by that is in Stranger Things, because we've been reviewing Stranger Things, a lot of the music that we hear, in a lot of the songs that we hear in Stranger Things,
It was like in universe.
is in universe. Somebody is listening to that song,
So we
in
hear it.
the story, in the frame. It's playing on the radio. There's a reason for us to hear it because the actual characters are listening to it.
Yeah.
That's how I prefer songs to be done in movies. Not that I don't like when it happens otherwise. I just don't think it's as well from a technical perspective when it's not done that way.
Yeah.
That's just a personal thing for me. So yeah, the music was great. It's just
It is really good.
is what it is.
But that pretty much is kind of the middle of the film. I don't want to rob you of the experience of watching it. I genuinely feel like you should pay to watch this movie.
I imagine most people have already seen it.
They probably
I would
have.
think so. If
You're right. But
intentionally listen to spoilers.
I
but-
personally know people who haven't, though, so I'm sure that there are people who will run across this who
I
haven't
mean,
watched
yeah,
it.
there's a fair number of people that don't mind like watching an in-depth review on something before they go to see
Sure.
something.
I mean, great. And if you found our video and you are watching this, thank you very much, by the way, for sticking around for this long. But also know that the movie is just, it keeps getting better. Like, it's just one excellent moment after another. And you have a really great moment towards the middle of the film where you have just kind of a rising tension where Pete gets fired and basically told that he's never going to be allowed to fly again.
Yeah.
At which point, well, at least for the Navy, at which point he goes rogue and gets into an F-18 and proves that the mission that he's been trying to teach all of these pilots to fly the way that he said it needed to be flown is
indeed
possible. And does the work of the two-team system by himself. And And I just
Yeah.
want to point on the fact that watching Tom Cruise sit in the back seat of whatever jet he was in, because he tried to fly and the Navy was like, no. And the insurance company probably said no too. But it's real G's. Like,
Yeah.
there is a decent amount of footage where these actors are legit in fighter jets and they are pulling real G's.
Especially Tom Cruise, because he's insane.
Yeah, he is actually
he
certifiably insane.
Himself, and I think Jackie Chan are, if memory serves correct, could be wrong, are some of the more difficult actors to insure over the years.
Yeah, Jackie Chan, having read his...
To the point that...
They have like their own policies that are exclusive to them.
And where they have like become producers on films that they would not have otherwise have been.
Yeah.
So that they can just do whatever they want.
That's correct.
Without having to worry about the insurance.
100%. Yeah, Jackie Chan specifically. I know quite a bit about this because he's one of my favorite martial artists, but also one of my favorite actors.
And Tom Cruise, when he wanted to like hang off the side of a plane.
Yeah, because reasons. But anyway, Jackie Chan has done a number of what's the word I'm looking for?
Death-defying?
Death-defying, but also has been like life-flighted numerous times for severe injuries.
Oh, dude's broken every bone in his body.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's like jumped off of like skyscrapers. Legit, he like in a movie jumped off a skyscraper and like ran down the side of it. He has done insane stupid stuff, but like his stunt team is some of the most like highly trained, highly qualified stuntmen in the stunt
Yeah.
Like the Jackie Chan
100%.
stunt team they're amazing. And I'm sure that they're gonna like go on to work in
like many
Hollywood
of the people that have been on his stunt team have gone on to be stunt coordinators in their own right. On like the Jackie Chan school, if you will.
Yeah.
Just as far as his legacy of stunts and his team is exceptional.
Yeah, and having started as a stuntman himself and then excelling to stardom in the early 90s and through the early 2000s with Shanghai Noon and Shanghai Nights.
Well, to start him in the U.S., but for 20 years prior to that...
Oh, he was a superstar in China for a long time. His Golden
he started out
Harvest
doing
films
stunt
are
work
amazing.
in, like, Bruce Lee films.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, in Enter the Dragon, he's actually the dude that gets, epically, like, neck stomped by by Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
He also gets, like, punched through a wall in another one of Bruce Lee's films, but... Yeah, Jackie Chan's great. Love
Anyway.
him. But yeah, getting back to the other crazy person that is probably
Very
insanely
hard to
expensive to insure.
Yeah.
Real G's in those F-18s. And those are real F-18s, by the way, in a ton of shots. I couldn't tell you which ones are fake and which ones are real. But in the early little blurb that Tom Cruise gives, he mentions that it's real flight.
As real as they could possibly make it.
That was his thing about this movie and I think that's why it took so long to make and release, was because obviously you have to work with the Navy, and that's probably no small task, because that is one of our armed forces, and they're not there to entertain you.
Yeah.
They are there to blow stuff up and win wars. And on the flip side, you have, Hollywood that obviously has a very different schedule, and then COVID hit. So it's a miracle this movie ever got released, ever got made. But the fact that there are real F-18s and there are real Gs, and they really did put those actors in the back seats of those jets is just... it was so good to see the realism come back into Hollywood to some extent. So it's like I get so sick of seeing everything faked. It's just it gets tired of it.
It is very much appreciated. And you can tell, like I said before, you can tell that love and care went into making this movie, and they do try and make it and present it as real as possible, which is awesome. And for the most part, they succeed. And maybe that's why the certain story beats that are so unrealistic stand out so much, because so much of this movie feels authentic.
Yeah.
Where when something happens that just
Sorta
doesn't make
unrealistic,
sense, it's like it really stands out. It's like, that's that's not right. That shouldn't,
Right.
just don't. Mainly for me, towards the end of the film, one thing that it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense why they did that. I get it. I get why they did it for the sake of the story, and of course everything works out in the end because happy ending. Everybody lives. Nobody dies. Right?
Except for legit, everybody lives.
Yeah, nobody dies.
even the pilots, the bad guy pilots, they don't even die.
Somebody should have died.
They eject.
Here, the part I'm talking about is when Rooster's about to get shot down, and Maverick breaks to stall behind him, and basically takes the missile hit for him.
Well, he drops flares first, allowing him to get away.
Allowing him to get away, but then
he gets hit by another one.
Yeah, it's not a direct hit, but it's one that goes off the flares because he's comes in and stalled, so the flares.
That's not the one that takes him out, though. It's the follow-up shot to that. He doesn't have any more flares, and it hits the back of the F-18.
Right.
Okay. I was just clarifying.
Yeah. But when Maverick gets hit and he goes down.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I'm okay with this.
Like, they're going to take him out of the story.
They're going to take him out.
Pete Mitchell dies to save the son of his best friend.
To save Juice's son. Perfect. It makes sense. I'm not happy about it, but I get it.
Yeah. I thought that's what they were going to do, too.
And that would have been perfectly fine. And then Rooster does something very stupid and unrealistic that he should not have done, that he would not have done. And I only say that because he goes back for Maverick, because he has to go back for him because they've created this bond. He just saved his life. He's not going to leave him to die. All that works except for the fact that Rooster can't actually save him. There's no feasible way for him to fly a plane anywhere and land it and find him and take off and actually save him. You are just going back to die. The logic behind the decision makes zero sense.
I think it was meant to be like a self-sacrifice. And even makes the point, he's like, you told me not to think.
Yeah, it's I get it, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just there's no logical reason for anybody to make that decision.
That wasn't a logic decision.
Because you can't save him.
It was a heart decision. I think that's why
you can't save him.
I know. I think he did it knowing that he wasn't going to save him. I know he did it intentionally, knowing that he was probably going to get shot down, but he was just going to see if he could keep him from getting blown away by whatever they were going to send after him, which he saves him from a Hind. I don't know if they still call them Hinds, but it's a helicopter, Russian-style helicopter, which we never actually see the nationality. I might point this out. I will point this out.
Yeah, we don't. It's never explained
the language,
where they're
uniform,
going,
nothing.
What country were bomb?
I think it's North Korea.
I don't know. They say that it's because they're violating some made-up treaty, whatever, something about
pretty sure it's North Korea.
Nuclear reactors within a certain area or something like that, right?
But it's also off the coast. It's very snowy.
Right,
so
it's off
maybe
the coast.
Russia or it's North Korea.
China.
It could be China. It could be China too. But fifth generation fighters, the only countries that have the money for that would be China, Russia, and North Korea.
Russia maybe has the money, but I don't think
North Korea too. We don't know what North Korea has, but we don't know what China has either.
Well, we know more about Russia has, but we'd just assume that China has more.
But we don't know the nationality. We can just guess at it.
It's never directly said.
It doesn't matter. It's fine. They're the bad guys, and that's all we need to know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a classic throwback to the 80s, actually, because in the 80s one, you don't know if they're Russians or not. They're just MiGs.
Well, you assume they're Russians.
Yeah, you assume they are, but they never actually say.
You called them Russians.
Yeah, that's because I know that's what the planes are. But I don't think they actually say that they're Russian MiGs. I could be wrong, but
I do not remember.
Anyway, it's irrelevant because we're talking about this movie, not that.
Anyway, that was one of the later points.
But I love the interaction they have afterwards, which being he lands and you expect a reunion. He just shoves him in.
Yeah, what are you doing,
idiot? and he's like, why did you do that?
What were you thinking? You told me not to think.
Yeah, he's like, and then he's like, you're right.
I get it.
Well, now what do we do?
I get it, and from that point, it works going forward.
I think that whole interaction is the most believable thing because that's exactly how a real person would react. It's well...
But I have a question.
Now what do we do?
Why didn't Maverick because everybody else flies in pairs in the cockpit.
Yes, why does he have no backseater?
Why doesn't Rooster and why doesn't Maverick have backseaters?
That's a question that I will have to ask my uncle, but I believe it has something to do with the type of fighter they're flying.
Or is it because they're... I'm not sure about.
I'm fairly certain...
why...
So a weapon systems officer is required in a 2-seater formation for
Right, because
several
they're the
different
ones that
varieties.
are in the back that are doing like the targeting and stuff for
Yeah,
stuff. Well,
yeah.
So it doesn't. Yeah,
I think I think it is the designation of the plane. I think that they're not all created equal and they're not all created to do the same thing. So I think
Okay.
certain F-18s have a backseater because they either are carrying a different payload that requires guided missiles and requires different like setups, like you need to be
Okay.
able to like read,
Sure.
navigate differently. And others are just a single cockpit because they're more of like a dogfighter, like more of like just a all-out combat. You just don't need it's unguided, unguided missiles. I could be totally off.
Yeah,
If somebody in the
F-18s don't use unguided missiles. Like you can fire them unguided, but like
yeah, you
generally,
can fire them dummy, but they do have. I think they're using
Because we've been
tomahawks.
using guided missiles for like almost 20 years.
Yeah,
at least.
long time. I think the only answer I can give is that I think it's because they're just different like designations.
Like I don't know the answer to that question. That was the one thing.
I'm
that's like,
guessing, but
why don't they have
I also
other
have,
people in the
I
cockpit?
could ask. I have family members that are in the Navy and that were pilots, and they could tell me.
Okay.
So, but if someone knows, if you've got a family member or you flew for the Navy, if you're watching this video, which thank you for your service.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you sincerely. But if you know,
Let us know.
let us know because we're just potatoes when it comes to how that sort of thing
Because
works.
if there's logical reason for it, fair enough. If it's just because they can't have one because we need one to get shot down and then the other one to get shot down and we don't need anybody else to be collateral damage, then that's lazy writing.
That is lazy writing. But regardless,
But let me know.
Regardless, we get some of the best comedy in the entire movie in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, the stuff with Miles Teller and Tom Cruise.
Oh my gosh,
they
Miles Teller.
They have really good. That is his name, right?
Yeah, I think so. That guy, seriously,
really good.
I've seen a few of his movies before. This is absolutely his best performance, in my opinion, and he sells it so well in this movie.
Disagree.
Okay, well,
That is his best. He sells it. Yes, he's very
sells
good in
it
it. Not his
extremely
best
well.
for me, but very good.
With Tom Cruise, he is great. Chemistry they have together, the back and forth, the way that they end up working together, all of it. It works so well, and that's just a testament to their acting skills. I mean, they're both just incredibly gifted actors, but I think they just work really well together. But it just the lines themselves, dialogue, from a writing standpoint, didn't feel forced. I mean, for as unrealistic as this situation unfolds, they sell it to you as being completely unrealistic, where they are trapped behind enemy lines, and they are going to go to an air base that they just attacked.
You basically
and
know
steal
they're
a
dead.
jet. Yeah,
So
they're
they
like,
have to do something because they're dead anyway.
yeah, they're like, let's just go for it because why not? And they, from some previous satellite footage that they have F-16s or F-14s, I believe.
F-14s.
F-14 Tomcats, which are just, and they make a comment about like, it seems like they're the only ones who don't want to let like old things die or something like that. Just some dig it.
They're not the only ones that won't let go of old relics or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, that was the line.
Yeah.
That was the line. And so that was a little bit of foreshadowing because they are going to steal said F-14, which was the jet from the first Top Gun movie.
Yeah.
And we get a hilarious line, several hilarious lines with Miles Teller calling it a bag of ass and wondering if it's going to fly, and Tom Cruise, him just being like completely shocked that everything is so different,
Right.
and then Miles Teller going, why are the wings extending? Like, what's going on? And it's great. It really is. And it just, everything about that it felt so natural and organic and really enjoyable to watch. And you feel, as the audience, you feel so just engaged in what's going on. You feel the energy that they feel, and it's just one of the first times that I can remember since watching, like, man, I think I'm trying to think of another movie where I felt like this into what was happening on screen, where I was like, I wanted to like cheer when stuff happened.
There was... Okay, so the last thing that I bumped into that I didn't like.
Go for it.
Because we're running a little long, but that's okay.
Happens every time.
It does. We're like, we'll, 40 minutes. Yeah, we're not going to hit that.
Big fat lies.
So, throughout the film,
Yeah.
and I believe the first movie did not do this,
Okay.
but because I believe it to be unrealistic.
Okay.
It's a small detail, but it's like,
Is it one of the
you couldn't
maneuvers?
at least do that. No, it's so when we first meet Tom Cruise, he's at a testing site for whatever plane they're trying to get up to.
Yeah, it looks
Mach
like
10 something. And you have that, like the black major dude. Is he a major? That's kind of with him.
Yeah, he calls
kind
him
of like
Hondo.
fronting the program kind of thing.
Yeah, Hondo, his right hand man, basically.
Yeah.
It's like in charge of the program.
Yeah. Why does that dude go everywhere Tom Cruise does?
I think it's his flight crew chief.
Doesn't.
He doesn't say that. But why does he go everywhere with him?
Why is he head of that program?
And then why does
Like,
he go with
okay,
Tom
he's
Cruise
head of that
to
program.
Top Gun
Cool.
school?
Then why does he go with Tom Cruise has been called to be the instructor
Yeah, and then
over
like
at Top
Hondo
Gun.
goes with him and is like a crew chief there too.
Yeah, why is Hondo there? Like, he would get assigned somewhere else. Maybe it's possible he gets assigned there, but like, why? And then when they actually get reassigned to take out the mission, like, he continues to, like, the
He's on the
personnel
carrier with-
doesn't actually travel from location to location to location like that. You get assigned, like in the first movie,
Yeah.
when they're on the carrier,
Yeah.
and you have the admiral that's in charge there, and they go somewhere else, they have a completely different set of
Yep.
personnel,
Yep.
and they get sent back to the carrier, and with the original group of personnel, it's the pilots going back and forth because everybody's getting assigned somewhere new. You get
Yeah.
new orders, new destinations, places. Cool.
Yep.
It just felt weird that dude's just like always there. No matter where they go, he's just with them, and he's not involved with what they're doing at all. There's no reason for him to be there.
That's just a kind of a plot hole.
Unless I'm wrong, that just felt weird.
The other plot hole that people pointed out is that no one seems to be aware that Penny is the daughter of the Admiral in the first film, because they never make that very clear.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I got back from seeing the movie and talked to my roommate, and he brought it up. Like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I remember that reference. That reference they made 36 years ago for a half a second. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that wasn't so much an issue. Just like, it worked for me, even not knowing who she really was. Like, it's easy enough to tell. Like,
You don't
you
really-
have, some pre-existing relationships. It's all good. I don't need the backstory and everything.
Yeah, you don't really
That's
need
fine.
to know. And that's the nice thing about Top Gun Maverick is that really you don't need to watch the first film.
You don't.
All you need to do
I
is
just so I could have context.
I
but
did
having
too.
seen it.
You don't need to.
Yeah, you actually don't. You can get everything.
They give you everything you
In
need
the
to
film.
know. Quite arguably, if Top Gun, the first movie, did not exist and all you saw was Maverick, it would be a self-contained story with all of the beat points of the original film in the right places to tell you what happened so you'd know
Yeah.
what was going on.
You wouldn't be lost at all, but the first one
They just
does
feel like flashbacks in this movie.
make the second
Works
better.
great. Works perfect. But the dogfighting sequence with the two Gen 5 fighters is amazing.
Yeah.
It is so cool. Absolutely so cool.
It is really
and
cool.
I love playing fighter jet games. Every time I play Battlefield, my friends can attest to this. I am the guy that waits 10, 15 minutes just to get a plane.
Yep.
And hit or miss. Sometimes I'm really good at it. Sometimes not so much. But it definitely, as being an avid fan of aviation history and fighter combat over the years, I've studied World War II and World War I history fairly extensively. Wrote a huge paper on dogfighting over the Battle of Britain with the Hurricane and Spitfire aircraft and the German planes, and just I love aviation combat in general. I think it's really really cool. And watching this film and just the amount of love and attention that was given to not only the realism of everything, but just when there's CGI, and there is a lot of it, it is unrecognizable from the real thing.
Yeah.
And watching the cockpit sequences and there's clearly some sequences that couldn't have been filmed for real because you have Tom Cruise actually like manning the stick in the front seat of this F-14, which is not really possible unless he flew an F-14, which I don't think he did.
No, I don't know, but
Anyway, it's an amazing sequence, and it has so much tension in it, and it really, really is the highlight of the film for me, especially the very end, where they pull the exact same move that they did in the first film, where it was the first film, but it was opposite, where instead of Iceman basically being in danger of getting shot down, and then Maverick coming in and saving his life, Maverick is in danger of getting shot down, frankly, because he has no more bullets. Like, he genuinely has no more ammunition and no flares, and is doing everything possible to outrun and outfly this Gen 5 fighter. Mm-hmm. And Hangman shows up and just blows him out of the sky as he's launching a missile to shoot them down, and then makes another douchey comment and flies away. It was like, really, he did nothing to earn that. He just showed up and just stealth killed him.
It was his job.
Sure, but he just stealth killed him. Like, he didn't outfly him or anything. He just, like, showed up and pulled the trigger. Like, it really wasn't as impressive as Tom Cruise's, shooting down 2 of them in an avid dogfight, like, outmaneuvering and outgunning 2.
Work smarter, not harder.
Yes, work smarter, not harder, yeah. But yeah, no, other than that, those were the highlights of the film for me. And then I did tear up a little bit at the very end because they really sell the father-son relationship between the 2 of them. And it worked so well. For me, it did. Worked incredibly well.
Okay.
Especially when, like, you see him, like, helping work on the P-51 and the hangar, and then Penny pulls up in the old Porsche. Yeah.
It's Porsche 911?
Yeah, it's a freaking hot car. That's, like, one of the most American things I've ever seen. Like, Jennifer Connelly standing in front of a Porsche, like, with a P-51 in the background, like Tom Cruise. Like, that's America right there.
German cars.
Fast cars, fighter planes, and amazing actors and actresses. Like, that's America right there. Like, we're such a shallow country. but anyway, that's all I've got right there. Did you have anything else you're going to point out?
Nothing specific. I kind of pointed out all my grievances.
They weren't as egregious as I thought they would be, but I understand every single one of them.
Okay.
They're valid concerns.
Yeah, those were the biggest things that kind of stuck out to me. The rest of it, like we already talked about, I really enjoyed. There wasn't, much to point out necessarily. Going back to the visual effects and how good they were, where they're all throughout this movie.
Oh yeah,
it has to be, but you never notice it.
Not once.
I've probably said it before, like the visual effects are best when you don't notice it, when you don't know it's there. What would you rate the visual effects for in this film?
10.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a solid 10.
I agree. I think it's really good from everything that is practical and the things that are CG. It's all fantastically done and done to the service of the story.
Stellar.
Overall writing. I mentioned this before we started filming, and I'll say it. I prefer the story of the first one over the story of this one. What I mean by that is this second one feels a little contrived and manufactured to get everything going, where Pete Mitchell has, like, getting fired from, like, the one project and he's going to be done. Then Iceman steps in to, basically send him back to Top Gun so he can train these pilots to fly this mission because he's the only one that has real world dogfighting experience.
Yeah.
It all works well enough, but it feels just a little too contrived, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Than the first one
It's a
does.
little
Where the
natural.
the second one, Top Gun Maverick is a better movie by far, but the story in the first one feels a little more
Organic,
natural in how everything just plays out.
Yeah, they're just these 2 guys that get pulled to go to Top Gun because they're the best in their fighter unit, and they're the guy that's in charge has to pick somebody, and
then they graduate the school because they're all good pilots. Then they have a mission that they go on, and then that's the movie.
Yeah.
Like
that's it. That's the movie. This one feels a little bit more like they were looking for a reason.
Yeah, at least to get things going. Once you're in it,
you can say that about any movie.
You
but
can.
You quickly forget that this is a little bit of a manufacture.
You do.
You forget very quickly.
It's noticeable when it happens, but then once you get going, for me, like Luke said, you just kind of forget about it, and then you're along for the ride, and everything works.
There's never a moment where you get pulled out of the experience. Not for me, anyway. Like, from beginning to end, I was...
For me, I was just
sold.
the stuff that I brought up where it's just like, I just don't buy it.
Well, and this movie gets accused of nostalgia bait. I don't think that's fair.
I disagree. I disagree. I don't think it's nostalgia bait.
No. I think that the people that are panning it as nostalgia bait are relying on the fact that old actors are making an appearance, like Jennifer Connelly being, like the babe from the 80s that was in a lot of different stuff, and Tom Cruise being, also a babe that was in all of, the 80s and 90s, and Val Kilmer. So I think that they kind of just are panning
But two of those three, were in the previous movie, so your theory kind of falls apart there.
Right, and that's what I was going to get to, is that they are in there because they belong.
Yeah,
in the
they're
movie.
already characters that exist. Like, yeah.
Well,
they're
not only
there.
that, but they don't make any like cheesy throwback references to the original movie. It takes itself seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
And these people are aware of the fact that they're now old. Like they're, Tom Cruise is like 60, I think, or pushing 60.
He's old.
Yeah.
He's really
Dude's
not
getting
that old,
crusty.
but he's getting up there. Like, and he looks good for however old he is.
Yeah.
So, what would you rate the writing as a whole then?
I give it a 9.
8.
You give it an 8. I'll give it a 9.
You can have a 9. I'll give it an 8. Acting.
10.
You can have a 10. It's all good.
I like Ed Harris too, for the brief little stint he's in this movie.
Yeah, he's
a
in it.
salty dude that shows up.
Yeah, he's Ed Harris.
Yeah, it's true.
He doesn't really do much.
He just shows up and
shows
looks like
up,
Ed Harris.
be Ed Harris, and then go away. And he does that, and that's fine. Yeah, the acting was, for me, this isn't Miles Teller's best performance.
Really? What would you consider to be his best performance? If you say Fantastic Four, I will slap you. I will slap you.
I need to make sure I get the title right. I'll look it up real quick just to make sure.
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
Okay, that's the name of it. It's like, I know what movie it is. I just can't remember the name of it. Whiplash.
Okay.
I think, not that he's bad in this. He's fantastic. He's really good in this. But I think Whiplash is his best performance for me.
Okay.
So you can have a 10 for acting. For me, I give it an easy 8
On.
acting.
Okay.
Because it's great. It's really good.
Really good.
But it's not quite high enough. Not a 10 for me. Cinematography. Man. Most, like, the way this movie's shot, with like the dogfights and everything, that's the most impressive part
I
of
love
the film.
I love the runway scenes too, where he's riding his old it's a Suzuki, no, it's a Kawasaki,
Yeah, whatever
900.
old piece of crap he's riding around for a little bit.
Oh man, you can't dog on the classic bike, man. Like that was the first Ninja. Like that spawned a generation. Like that bike is super popular. But yeah, when he's just like cruising on the runway as the jets are like taking off, doing like 75, 80 on that, and he's just like grinning like a cat as he's just cruising on that bike.
10.
Oh man, yeah, 10.
I would agree with that.
It's so good. Oh man, is it good?
Editing. All the stuff in the air
The air stuff is a 10.
it's all
Drama,
really good.
more.
Everything that happens on the ground is
Normal.
very like base level, which is fine.
I'd give it a 9.
Fine.
I'd give it a 9 for the whole thing.
Because it's also like, the editing helps with the pacing, and it's really well paced. Nothing. It never felt like any part of it was dragging.
No, it never
At
did.
all?
Even the slow parts didn't feel like
Which
they were
normally,
dragging
if
at all.
you have things that feel too frantic or are dragging too much, it's because the editing isn't quite right, and they're like trying to piece together something that wasn't properly shot.
Right.
Generally, is when you have that kind of mismatch.
Yeah. Agreed.
But yeah, I think a 9 is fair on the editing, because the stuff in the sky, like you could so easily get lost with what is happening.
Oh yeah.
And where everybody is and which planes are which, and cutting back and forth, and like it's done just enough.
I like how at the very end too they get really, really wild with the editing too. When all the SAM missiles are flying and everyone's screaming back and forth, like telling each other to brake left, brake right, and they're telling each other like how to like just like evade, and the editing is just jump.
The only
between
time it
everybody's
gets
cockpits.
frantic and hard to follow is that one sequence, and only because it's actually frantic and hard to follow from the perspective of the pilots themselves.
Yeah, they're all scrambling and trying to stay alive. Yeah.
Score and soundtrack, 8.
Sure, I'll go with you on that.
Yeah.
I will say the Top Gun Maverick theme song is used to such great
Like
effect.
I do not know if the theme in this is the same as the first one.
It is.
It is? Okay.
It
Because
is.
when I first heard it, it's like, oh, that sounds exactly like it, but I wasn't sure if
It's
it was
longer.
exactly the
It's
same.
longer in the first one, but it's only I believe in Maverick in one instance when like he's at the base, like when he first gets back to Top Gun school, then they play the theme song for
Yeah.
it. The rest of the time, it's a soundtrack and score.
Some score, some new stuff, but it's all good, especially
Yes.
the actual original score. The music that we hear, I've already given my thoughts
Lady
about
Gaga,
that.
not my favorite. She has a great song in this movie.
Yeah, I forget who.
My wife told
Did
me the
the
name
music.
of the other band.
There were
They're-
3 individuals that specifically did the music.
My favorite song was not Kenny Loggins' "Danger Zone," which I love that song, and they do that song is
Plays a
at
couple
the-
times.
Yeah, it's at the beginning of the movie, just like the original, which was so cool. I love that. Then they also play the Who. Won't Get Fooled Again
Yep.
during the dogfight training, which was really cool. But the beach game sequence,
Yeah,
that song was my
Don't
favorite
remember it.
one. That was so much fun.
but yeah, easy 8 for the
Oh yeah.
for the music though. I think
yeah.
that's pretty fair. Set deck, costume, and wardrobe. It's all set present day, so there's not really like a whole lot.
Uniforms are on point.
As far as I can tell,
Flight
not
suits
being-
are on point. Cockpits look good.
I don't know enough to be able to
mean,
recognize
they're-
anything that was out of place.
They're real cockpits when they are. I mean, I give it a 9 easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say 10, but I mean, like, because it's so believable, everything about it, and that's part of my scoring is just, do I believe it?
Right. Well. Yeah. What'd you say? 9?
Yeah, like a 9.5, 9.
Yeah, it was certainly all believable. Nothing like immediately felt out of place. When you make things present day,
I will say he was missing a sidearm. I did notice this. I don't know if you noticed this, but Miles Teller and him, when they are running from, they don't have a sidearm.
yeah,
I don't know why the Navy. I know for a fact that Navy pilots are issued a sidearm, like they were at least, as far as I was aware, for a long time. Like they carried M9s for forever. It's like you get shot down, you need some way of
I
defending
go an
yourself.
8. An 8 for
Maybe he just didn't have it on him because he like ditched the survival pack that like he was attached to when he ejected.
maybe.
But it seems like an easy detail that they missed.
Maybe I go 8 for set deck.
All right,
9 for you.
sure. Take a point off because I noticed the missing sidearms.
Okay, yeah, 8 for me. Audio mixing and sound design.
Amazing.
I wouldn't
So
be able
good.
to tell you if things sounded out of place, but everything.
No ADA gaffes. Everything was.
Yeah.
Even the voiceover for Val Kilmer being the most noticeable thing sounded
that-
totally legit.
Yeah, it didn't sound out of place at all.
No, not even a little bit.
Like I'm curious if he was actually able to record his lines for that scene.
Right, and they just like maybe brought the volume up a little bit or something.
Yeah, but like
Who knows?
It 100% worked. I'm trying to think if there's any other spots throughout the film that sounded.
I loved the sound of the stealth fighter too. When it
No.
broke Mach 10, it sounds so cool. Oh my gosh, it sounds so cool.
All right, so what would you give it?
10
10?
for sure.
8 for me.
I love the sound of the machine guns, or they're not machine guns. They're miniguns. I don't think they're miniguns. I think they're actually firing like huge freaking bullets out of the Tomcat. I think they're miniguns. One centrally mounted minigun.
Mm-hmm. All right, directing.
Easy 10 for me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Kind of a, resemblance of everything, not resemblance, but indicative of the movie as
Everything
a whole.
up to this point.
Yeah, all the different categories.
Do we know the name of the director?
I don't remember his name. I didn't recognize it when I saw it.
Man,
Not
this
a bad
guy's-
thing. I just didn't recognize
This
it.
guy's guaranteed to get work for at least the next 10 years.
But 10 for you. I think there were a little, just the story bits that I bumped into that I just didn't buy.
Yeah.
Like things that were just more
For the-
little
for the
too
movie.
forced for the sake of the film and just pushing things along.
Yeah.
Which I get. You sometimes have to do that, but it's better if you don't.
Right.
It's better if you just write it better.
Yeah.
So I go I go 7. It was good, but I think other aspects of it stood out that maybe were not as indicative of the directing itself.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So, overall enjoyment.
2000. 10, for sure.
10?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I figured.
It is just exceptionally good, in my opinion. I love this movie.
really like this movie.
I can't wait to buy
I
it
didn't
when
like
it comes
it that
out.
much. I didn't like it that much. I don't know if I'll buy it.
Oh,
I don't
will.
buy a lot of movies anymore.
I
used to.
don't either. I buy them
Although-
occasionally when I can't find them if they're older, but I own a fair collection of like VHS and DVD movies.
I'm just gonna
Yes, I
double check
still
my
have
math
VHS
real
tapes.
quick.
I'm that old. And I do have a VHS player, and it does work. You can still buy them at Walmart. It's a real thing. It's not Stone Age technology yet, as much as some people I know wish it was. But
All right. Go ahead and talk for a bit while I double check my math. Just do the thing. Just do the thing.
I mean, overall, legitimately, everybody that I've talked to that has watched this movie has thoroughly enjoyed it. My mom loved it. My mom hates going to the movies. She hates most modern films, as do I. But I think also just my mom, the first thing out of her mouth was, it took her back. And I think for a lot of people that watch this film that are of an older generation, I think this movie really capitalized on a group of actors and a more traditional storytelling when America was still the best and America was still the top country in every aspect to live in. We exported culture, we exported financial wealth, we exported food, we exported our music, our movies. The whole world emulated us, and they wanted to be us. And that kind of isn't the case anymore, unfortunately. America's kind of sunsetted a little bit, and it makes me sad because I am very, very much unapologetically American.
I like going off of that. The movie is very like pro, just like America, so to speak, without ever saying it.
Yeah, that
Like,
they never
because
say
there's
that out loud.
like the enemies of this movie, like we pointed out, like
They're
not
unnamed.
trying to villainize any other country.
Yeah, there's tons of countries that
necessarily.
could have been named as the villains, but they don't because it's not important.
Right, so it's just pro-America in the sense that it's a somewhat patriotic film about these fighter pilots that just so happen to fly for America, but it's never about that.
Right. But
You know what I mean?
But it is absolutely an American film where
Yeah, well, sure.
everything about it, just the culture of America is present in this film.
Oh, 100%.
And I think that was done intentionally. And like I said, it made my mom cry. And I don't think it made my mom cry because it was like super emotional, even though there is definitely, it is hard not to get a little teared up and choked up at the very end of the film when Goose's son and Maverick are finally able to overcome like a almost 3 decade long, or probably 2 decade long conflict. And obviously for Maverick, having known both his mother and father and having had to watch both of them die is very personal for him. And you really feel that. You really do feel that. It's very relatable. It's very touching. And yeah, this movie's just, in my opinion, I think it deserves every dollar it's earned. I think Tom Cruise, not the best individual. He definitely has his issues, but I think he really understands how to make a movie that appeals to everyone. And I think that's part of the reason why this movie is so good, is that it doesn't matter what you think about anything. It doesn't matter what God you worship. It doesn't matter what flag you hold allegiance to. You can relate to someone in this movie. And if you're watching this video and you're in another country and you have seen this movie, we'd love to hear your comments and thoughts about that. But I know this movie's made $1 billion worldwide. And that tells me that everybody somewhere
curious
had something that they enjoyed about this film.
How those numbers divide.
Yeah, like where the biggest source
Yeah.
of income was.
Okay.
And I'm also glad that a lot of people were really worried that this was going to happen to appease China, because it seems like all anyone can do these days is suck up to China.
A lot of movies. Well, to be fair,
China is the largest domestic audience in the world. They have more citizens than anybody else, and they have the biggest, more than us.
Well, I know they have more than us, but do they have more than India?
I'm not sure, but I
Like,
know that
China
India
is one of
doesn't
the largest
consume American movies.
Right, that's what it is. I don't know if they're the largest. They're the largest market in the sense that they're the largest market outside of America that consumes American film.
Right, and
So a lot of changes are made to some American films to appease that audience. You know, removing certain things that the government of China doesn't like
because they have a
show the
censorship
films
board.
there.
They have a censorship
Yeah.
board, and so they just quite literally will just tell you you can't show this movie in our country because of X, Y, or Z. And so in the trailers, they kind of fudged out the Taiwan flag on the back of his jacket because in China's opinion, Taiwan is not a real country, and it's just like
Correct.
a satellite of China, even though they are a sovereign nation, independent of China. And Japan, obviously, is a thorn in China's side as well, because they're a huge ally for the United States, and they have one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world. Most people don't know that. The Chinese Defense Force, they signed just a little bit of history for you guys, not that you care, but I'll
Chinese
tell
or
you.
Japanese?
Japanese.
You said Chinese.
Did I say? I'm so sorry. Japanese.
Just making sure.
The Japanese Defense Force is so named because after World War II, they signed their new constitution, basically, and there was a law that was basically put into effect that they couldn't have a military, but they were allowed a defense force after Korea happened, because the United States saw the need for an ally in the Pacific that would protect us from our communist enemies. And so the Japanese Defense Force was allowed to exist because at that point they had not been allowed to have any military whatsoever. No production, no training at all. But
Right.
only under that caveat
But
was
am I
that allowed to happen.
Correct as well that there was a expiration date on that mandate.
It is. It has been. But so far, they've kept that kind of as
Where
still
it's
a running...
what, it was like 50 years or something along those lines where
Yes.
they couldn't, and now we're to the point in history where it's like
They could totally just redo that and they could call it something else, but it's still called the
right, it's
Defense
called the same,
Force.
but the point is they've been able to grow that over the past 20 years or whatever.
don't mess with Japan.
Since-
You get screwed. Their navy and their military, top notch.
Yeah.
They just don't ever talk about it for good reason. Just walk softly, carry a big stick.
All right, ready for our final scores?
Yep.
After a lot of math, I don't know why it was difficult for me this time. So many numbers. 94 for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a little low, given how much you were raving about this movie.
Well, I mean, the smile on my face just tells you everything you need to know about this film. I love this movie.
Yeah. For me, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 84.
84? Okay.
Yeah, 84.
I think, again, for me, it's a little bit more personal because I have a lot of family members who served in the Navy.
That's fair.
And it really is just like, man, I love seeing a movie that just doesn't denigrate anything about being America.
Yeah.
And being in the American Armed Forces. Like, lately just too. I mean, the amount of garbage that we've seen, politically speaking, from the PR departments of the various the various branches of our military is really, really sad to see how far things have gone. And I don't blame the servicemen for that at all. So I loved this movie for that, but I also loved it because it was just such an amazing narrative, and I would recommend anybody to go see this movie. Don't
Yeah.
care who you are.
It was really good. I thoroughly
Super clean
enjoyed it.
too. It is absolutely child safe. You can take your kids to this movie, no problem.
It's 13, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not... I don't know if there's a whole lot to be wary of.
There's no sex scenes. There's no like egregious violence of any kind. There's like
No.
one swear word in the entire movie.
Well, no, they dropped the F-bomb once.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That they have like the
They
one
swear throughout
F-bomb.
the film, though.
Okay, you got me.
Like, if you want to be, like, nitpicky and point things out like that about it. Anyway, we've
It's
gone...
not a puritanical film, but of the films I've seen lately,
Yes.
this one definitely gets like a clean bill of health as far as being like super family friendly.
All right, well, we have rambled on far enough, I think.
Okay, cool.
Thoughts clear.
Yeah.
Take it away.
If you've enjoyed this video, thank you so much for sticking around. If you didn't like the video, thank you for watching anyway. If you could leave us a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel if we've earned it, we would really appreciate that. And share this video with your friends and family. That will help us to get the word out a little bit more about our channel and help us to continue doing what we're doing. Jeremiah?
And if you are listening to us over on Spotify, thank you very much. If you would leave us a rating and follow us there, that will help out a lot as well. And we will see you next time.
Later.